Information is truly a source of learning and a liberating facet of life. But for it to be effective, it must be organized and properly processed. That's the business that we're about, giving you the information to make the right decisions for today, tomorrow, and the days after. Welcome to Jamaica Magazine. Today we join the rest of the world in observing International Day for Universal Access to Information. I'm Theodore Henry. The details of today's show unfold now.
Good day, I'm Stephen McHugh, and this is your JIS News for Wednesday, September 28. The capacity of the National Water Commission, NWC, to truck water when needed has been boosted with the receipt of 8 new water trucks. The vehicles, which were procured at a cost of approximately $105 million from Tankwell Limited, were handed over yesterday. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says the drive to improve the NWC's responsiveness was initiated in 2020, but was hampered by the diversion of funds to manage the impact of COVID-19 on the island.
The NWC had no standing capacity to respond as a utility if there was a break in service to the customer. So we made a decision to allocate capital resources to buy these trucks.
The last purchase of water trucks for the NWC was made in 2009 when 10 units were procured. Meanwhile, Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Matthew Samuda, says the capacity of the trucks represents 35,000 gallons of water which can be distributed daily.
This returns normality when businesses are indeed interrupted with water supply. This returns dignity to households when they don't have water supply, either because of disruption or because of lack of connection.
The trucks will be assigned across the island as part of the NWC's response strategy. The region's first National Consumer Protection and Welfare Policy and Implementation Plan is one step closer to becoming a reality. Led by the Consumer Affairs Commission, CAC, the policy seeks to safeguard consumer rights and protection from unsafe goods and unfair business practices. It's also aimed at promoting environmentally sustainable businesses and consumption patterns, which will maintain Jamaica's first-place ranking in the Caribbean for ease of doing business. At a virtual stakeholder consultation and validation workshop for the draft policy, Portfolio Minister Dr. Norman Dunn highlighted the importance of finalizing the document.
Consumers are the largest economic group and continue to play a vital role in our economy, for which government must be deliberate in ensuring adequate safeguards and support for their benefit. Your deliberations today is to ensure that people are placed at the center of decision making.
The National Consumer Protection and Welfare Policy is being pursued through a 9-month project which began in January. It is funded by the Jamaica Foundation for Competitiveness and Growth Project. Meanwhile, the National Compliance and Regulatory Authority, NCRA, has sought to clarify its role and functions, which is separate but complementary to that of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, BSJ. The NCRA is an agency of the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, which is responsible for inspecting and monitoring food processing establishments. The entity is also tasked with inspecting commodities at the ports of entry, as well as ensuring that scales and measuring devices used in trade are accurate. The BSJ, meanwhile, operates as a facilitator and develops standards for commodities, services, and processes which are enforced by the NCRA.
When the food safety inspectors go out, we are now totally the regulators. Previously, when we go out as the Bureau Standards Inspector, the operators expect us to tell them what to be done and then afterwards inspect them, which you can't do. So the regulators, which is us, are now free to go out and do our job, which is the enforcement part, the regulation part.
Products which are non-conforming and not meeting the standards and the technical regulations, we have powers of enforcement. We can withdraw products from sale, we can detain products, we can seize them, we can destroy them, we can condemn them.
Both Mrs. Pinnock and Dr. Richards were speaking at a JIS think tank on Wednesday. In other news, hundreds of students in and around Olympic Way in St. Andrew are now benefiting from a library. The $9 million facility, which is located at the Jamaica China Goodwill Infant School, was built and outfitted by Reading Owls International with funds from C.B. Facey Foundation. It serves students who attend schools in the area, including Balcom Drive and Drews Avenue Primary and Infant. Plans are also in place to establish a homework and resource center in the coming months. At the recent handing over ceremony, Principal Sulin Ward-Brown expressed hope that the library will not only increase literacy rates, but also the community's profile.
This library, we're hoping, will open a window to creating more opportunities of partnership in our community and sharing and building into our future so that they too will see the sense of giving back to community and strengthen the bonds within the community and within our country, Jamaica.
And finally, the Ministry of Labour and Social Security is calling on Jamaicans, particularly the youth, to be respectful, compassionate, and caring towards older persons. This comes as the ministry continues to recognize the role and relevance of the elderly with a week of activities running through to October 1 under the theme Aging Jamaica, epitomizing resilience and greatness. Speaking at a recent Thanksgiving church service for seniors, the ministry's permanent secretary, Colette Roberts-Risden, underscored the importance of older adults to the society.
Seniors, we want you to know that as a nation, we value the lessons of courage, determination, persistence, respect, adaptability, strength, compassion, sharing, and tolerance that you taught us.
And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stephen McHugh. Thanks for watching.
$234 Jamaicans have lost their lives in motor vehicle collisions in the first half of this year. Life is precious. Don't be a statistic. Drive with care.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Our first feature gives the 411 on uterine fibroids, causes, signs, and symptoms.
Uterine fibroids are benign tumors of the uterus. That's in medical terms. In layman terms, they are masses that grow on the uterus or on the womb of a woman, and they can grow to various sizes. You can have one, you can have multiple. And the most important thing patients tend to ask is, are these cancerous? So benign means it's not cancerous.
Medical experts will tell you that the root causes may not be so clear, but there are certain factors that are most likely to account for this issue impacting women.
We believe a lot of women who have it actually do because of genetics. So if your mother or your sister or you have a strong family history of uterine fibroids, it's quite likely that you're at risk of having uterine fibroids as well. We also believe that they tend to pop up more so when your hormones are very active. So that's why it presents in those patients in their reproductive age. So once you get to your 20s, 30s, 40s, that's when you would expect fibroids to start to show up. It may be occurring in response to your diet. So if you have a poor diet, high in red meat, highly processed foods, very little fruits and vegetables, we believe that that impacts on the presence of fibroids and definitely the growth of fibroids.
Meet Raquel Bailey, whose unfortunate journey with uterine fibroids lasted for almost 9 years.
I was around 27, touching 28, and I went for my regular female checkup. When they did the ultrasound, they said everything was fine, but there was a point that he could not see beyond. So he decided to go do it vaginally. And that's when he found the fibroid on top of my uterus. I was saying to myself, it's hard. I'm not sure if I can get pregnant with it. I was worried about conception, of course, and I was worried about if it is cancerous or anything, because at that point I wasn't sure what fibroids was. I knew it ran in my family, but back then they didn't call it fibroids. My tummy began to grow, especially the top part, since it was resting on top. So my tummy began to protrude. And of course, when I had my period, the pain was severe. I had, to the point that I even had to lie on the floor to get a little bit of relief from it. Yeah, my clothes couldn't fit much because of the tummy hanging over.
The symptoms occur dependent on the size of the fibroids, the location of the fibroids, and also dependent on what else is happening to the patient otherwise, right? So common symptoms related to size are, if the fibroids are very big, then the woman looks as if she looks pregnant. So she notices that her tummy is growing, the waist of the clothes start to fit her a bit differently. She might start to have what we call compressive symptoms. Based on the location of the uterus, it can press on the bladder, which is in the front, and that's where your urine is. So you might find that you're complaining of more frequent urination. You're going to the bathroom to pee all the time, right? Another thing is that your bowel is at the back, behind your uterus, so you may get constipated. Again, because your nerves come from behind, from the spine backwards, then you can also have compressive symptoms on nerves around there, and some patients come with back pain. Because it is close to where the blood vessels go down into our legs and the nerves go down into our legs, some people complain about pain radiating all the way down to their legs, as well as swelling. If the fibroids are on the inner side of the uterus or within the muscle of the uterus, that's where your period comes from now. So those patients tend to complain about heavy bleeding. Bleeding that is lasting more than a week, more than the average period. They're soaking through pads in an hour, in 2 hours, messing up themselves, right? That causes a lot of social embarrassment. Not only that, but if you're bleeding that heavily, then you start to get symptoms of anemia. So you start to feel weak, dizzy, you might actually faint. Another symptom that patients can present with is pain. So if the fibroids grow to a certain size, then they start to outgrow the blood supply that comes from outer to inner. And sometimes they can, what we call, degenerate, and that causes patients to have a lot of pain.
I got married, and my husband and I spoke, and I said to him, all right, I don't want to do the surgery, have any surgical procedure done on me, just in case that they found more and they had to take out the entire thing. So I wanted to try and conceive before doing the myomectomy. Then I got pregnant in the February of 2021. That's when the fibroids became aggressive. It grew and it grew and it grew. I looked so much like I was full-term pregnancy when I was only 4 months pregnant. So it was very aggressive. I was really sick in the first part of the pregnancy, so much so that I was labeled a high-risk patient. After having my baby, I went to the doctor to do my regular checkup, and Dr. Madam was saying to us when we decide to take out the fibroids. So I told her we were waiting on her. She said, no, man, the decision is yours. So I said to her, all right, maybe we can do it now. I was there touching my tummy, because when I went in, it was huge, huge. It was like a full baby. It was the size, the fibroid was the size of a basketball. It was, yeah, and there were 3 others, so it was 4 fibroids. And she took it out, and when she took it out, she said everything went well, and my uterus, it's healthy. That's the word she used. The best part of my journey having fibroids is hearing that there are treatment options available.
So fibroids can be treated in a number of different ways, but really and truly treatment should be aimed at the patient's symptoms as well as what their future fertility desires are. Now, if you are having bleeding problems and the size of the fibroid is not significant, then we can entertain giving you medical management to try and maintain the bleeding to a level that is acceptable. So sometimes that involves using tablets. There are some NSAIDs that we use for that. There are hormonal tablets that we can use. There's also the hormonal injection that we can use to help to reduce the amount of bleeding that you are having. If it is that you are having a problem with pain and size, then that's where surgery comes in. A lot of the patients ask, why doc, I don't really want to do surgery. I'm not ready to do surgery. And they ask if there's anything that can be used to shrink the fibroids. There are medications out there that have been used to shrink fibroids, but they don't maintain the fibroid at that size for the rest of your life. And they can only be used for a short period. If they are not so large but they are plentiful and they're causing you significant symptoms like your blood count is really low, you're frequently missing work, it really interrupts with your daily living, then we would recommend doing surgery. And surgery involves either removing the fibroids only, or we can remove the uterus in total. Now that decision is a big decision. If you have finished having your children, you don't want to have any more kids, then clearly removing your uterus is okay.
What I learned coming out of this entire experience is that I should not be afraid of my doctor, all right, or doctors in general. The gynecologists, they are there to help you. Visit them, have an annual or your regular routine checkup. It is to ensure that you have a healthy life.
From one health talk to the next, here's what you need to know about diabetes with a focus on treatment and preventative measures.
Diabetes is a serious chronic lifestyle disease affecting millions of people over the world and continues to increase. Diabetes affects how your body turns food into energy. It is a disease in which your blood glucose or blood sugar levels are too high, and glucose comes from the food you eat. Insulin is a hormone that helps the glucose get into your cells to give energy. Sometimes your body doesn't make enough or any at all, doesn't make any insulin, and so it doesn't use the insulin well. Glucose then stays in your blood and doesn't reach your cells. Over time, having too much glucose in your blood can cause complications. Example, situations with the kidney, heart disease, and so on. Although diabetes has no cure, there are steps you can take to manage your diabetes and stay healthy.
It is through lifestyle that we manage the risk of diabetes. Those behaviors include increased physical activity, a healthy diet, routine health checks, and strict adherence to medication. The Ministry will be championing the cause of persons living with diabetes. We have updated our clinical management guidelines, which is now available on our website, and we will be working on increasing access to testing through the introduction of point-of-care testing. This methodology of testing is the gold standard for monitoring and control of diabetes. Our agency, the National Health Fund, will continue to support persons through the provision of diabetic medication and supplies, and I encourage persons with diabetes to enroll in the NHF card program to access this benefit.
The person with diabetes should really have an opportunity to sit down with a trained clinician who is able to help them to understand the concepts of diabetes self-management, education, and support. There are 4 core areas the patient must begin to understand: how and when to take medication, That's the first one. If you take insulin, then you need to know how does your insulin work and how do you eat in relation to the insulin. Then there are the people who have type 2 diabetes, which commonly start off with education on activity and just healthy nutrition. And then we add one of 5 classes of oral agents. And then we teach them how to make food, how to eat food. Also, we think of things like target blood pressure. Is your weight healthy, or do you need to lose a little weight? And most importantly, how do you feel? What is your quality of life? All of this is what we focus on. Also, when you get your lab work done, what is your hemoglobin A1C? The target should be 7% or less. Keep that number in your mind. Diabetes damages the feet, the kidney, and the eyes at first, and then eventually we also find it can cause coronary vascular disease too. But for foot care, the person with diabetes every day, you wash your feet, wash them properly. Dry your feet, dry between the toes. Moisturize your feet, but do not put moisturizer between the toes. Make sure that you wear cotton socks, right? If you're going to have your toes cut by somebody trained who knows how to cut them. Examine your feet every day. Do not walk barefoot. Please, please, please do not walk barefooted, because if you injure or cause trauma to the feet, you may not feel it because your diabetes has damaged the nerves to the feet. And finally, when you buy shoes that are comfortable and that you can wear without causing blisters or trauma to the feet. Now we have research that shows that I can prevent the eye damage, the kidney damage, the foot damage, and the amputations by just keeping my blood glucoses under control and taking care of myself.
There's no such thing as a diabetic diet, but it's all about how much I eat, the timing of my meals. So it's your portion sizes is what is important. Now, what we do recommend is that persons eat at least 3 balanced meals per day and small snacks. Snacks usually mean smaller, more nourishing meals, which we usually recommend that it be your fruits, your vegetables, or you can also use your nuts. Each meal or snack should contain protein because we need it to be balanced as well. Each meal should contain at least your protein and your fat, and we also want them to select a variety of foods from all the food groups. So there is some recommendations about the amount of fruits that you should eat per day. We usually say 2 to 3 servings. We want you to include a variety of vegetables daily. We also want you to include more peas, beans, and nuts in your daily meals. Reduce your intake of salty and processed foods, and to reduce your intake of fats and oils, and that of sugary foods and drinks. You aim for foods that have high sources of fiber, such as your whole wheat bread, whole grain rice, flour, more of your ground provisions. They will give you fiber, right? And that will slow down the rate at which your body breaks down the food, so you won't have a rapid increase in your blood sugar levels, versus if you eat foods that are low in these added fibers. When you're having alcohol as a person living with diabetes is not to have it on an empty stomach, because it gives the risk of lowering your blood sugar. And also what we want you to do is that once you have diabetes, we do not really recommend the mixed drinks, so as to say, because they usually have a sweetened base. For women, it's usually you can have a drink per day, and for men is no more than 2 drinks. And what is a drink? Usually for beer, it's not more than 12 ounces. And for like a shot, it's usually a shot, which is about 1.5 ounces. And for wine, recommendation is usually about 5 ounces thereabout.
There are several researches that have shown that physical activity, when done properly, for persons who are diabetic, again, you heard it, allows you to use up glucose. For children, the recommendation is at least 60 minutes, 5 days a week of moderate to vigorous activity, and it must be a combination of muscle and bone strengthening activity. That's the recommendation for our children. For adults, it's at least 30 minutes, 5 days a week to get some health benefit, meaning increased circulation, reduced stress. And for the elderly, it's at least
30 minutes, 5 days a week. If you're a diabetic patient, these are some of the activities that are very good for you. Swimming, jogging, dancing, these activities, they're not very vigorous. You know, you maintain them at a low to moderate pace, and it's a very effective way of managing and controlling your blood glucose or your blood sugar. If you are going to start a physical activity program, that you check with your doctor before you start, because if you have a condition, if you're diabetic, hypertensive, you have any other medical condition, your doctor will determine the intensity level, the type of activities that you can do.
Mr. President, several countries in Latin America and the Caribbean are facing an epidemic of crime and violence. Since the pandemic and the disruption in education, challenges with mental health are being increasingly expressed in violent ways. The propensity to resolve conflict or cope with social and mental stresses through violence requires a public health response. And Jamaica has not only engaged in global initiatives such as the Partnership to End Violence Against Children, but we have recently empaneled a National Commission on the Prevention of Violence to advise the government on building out an articulated public health and social service response. However, the situation is exponentially complicated and exacerbated by the influx of illegal and unregistered small arms into our country. From organized transnational criminal enterprises to street-level gangs to the misguided youth in the inner city, the availability of guns is driving an ever-increasing homicide rate. In the same way that a war on drugs is being prosecuted, in which we have been faithful partners in policing what comes through our waters or leaves our shores, there now must be a war on guns. Jamaica does not manufacture guns, but our population suffers from the effects of widely available guns. The countries that manufacture weapons that are available to the public must implement stronger measures to ensure that those weapons do not end up on the streets and in the hands of people for whom they were not intended. In the same way that there is a concern about illegal drugs on the streets of the rich countries, there must be concern about guns on the streets of developing countries like Jamaica.
After all that learning, we put the final pause here for today's show. Thanks for sticking through the Jamaica Magazine journey. And even as you await tomorrow's journey, keep engaging with us on our website at www.jis.gov.jm. From all of us here at the JIS, I'm Theodore Henry. Stay dry and stay safe.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.